Welcome to SciTech Culture with Steve Kern and Ben Warner, where we examine science, technology and culture in the 21st century. Visit our website at scitechculture.com. Hello and welcome to SciTech Culture. My name is Ben Warner and I'm joined once again by my good friend and colleague Steve Kern. How are we today, Steve? Are you feeling safe? You feeling nice in your little igloo there, just like I am right now, self-contained and whatnot? I'm actually, for all the fears about the coronavirus, I'm actually, it's more, I'm not sure if I want to be out in public for other reasons at the moment.
Well, that's true. We'll talk about that in a minute. I'm fine. I think everyone's fine. I'm starting to sound like Donald Trump. It's a disease. It's going to be good. It's not going to be so good. We don't need to worry, but perhaps we should.
It's serious. It's hilarious. It's hysterical. It's all sorts of things. But we're going to sort of freestyle a bit today. Just talk about the coronavirus. You know, we talked about it last week, but it's worth revisiting again this week, given the series of events and announcements that occurred this week, and I guess an escalation of sorts, particularly I guess in the Western world. I guess the Chinese have been going through this for a little while already, but now it's sort of hitting us. But just to start with, one of the things that I was talking about with some people this week was just this idea that I don't know if I'm actually scared about the virus as opposed to people's reactions to the virus. When you've seen the fact that, you know, there's run-ons for the toilet paper run-ons, and then as I saw this morning, I foolishly thought going to a supermarket at 7 o'clock in the morning, no one would be there, but no, it's got queues out the door. There's toilet paper under everyone's arm. You know,
all over the country, Ben. This is happening all over the country. I was there a little bit after you, and it was exactly the same experience for me.
But like we were saying before we got on, like it's like all the pasta's gone, the pasta sauce is gone, the rice is gone, the tissues are gone. Obviously, people are were jumping over the toilet paper. I grabbed a pack just because I knew that I couldn't go even 2 hours later if I wanted to get some. And it's just like what I don't know. It's just I haven't quite experienced anything quite like it yet, just in terms of a level of unnecessary hysteria, and the vibe that it's not like so it's not like you know, some zombie apocalypse type scenario where people are killing each other or whatever, but there was definitely a really weird vibe. There was a sense of urgency there that I just feel like is, again, unnecessary. I don't know whether it's just the sheep mentality, the mob mentality, who knows?
There's probably a lot in there. I think there is a very nervous atmosphere whenever you see a group of people now, and I don't think it's anything to do with the sixth sense, but I believe that humans can sense anxiety and nervousness in others, and so there's no doubt about that. We've had pretty much all our politicians. I think the Australian version wasn't too bad. It wasn't really good, but at least they sort of pretended they had a plan.
Yeah.
Whereas the rest of the world, apart from China, since they've sort of sat on the outbreak, really hasn't had a concerted plan, unified plan. And the media, of course, maybe the traditional media has done okay, but let's face it, and social media feeds, fake news and that sort of thing has done enough. Toilet paper shortages have done enough to really disturb people generally. I think what people need to remember, because COVID-19 is serious, but it's not really serious at an individual level. It's serious at a population level. So as a global population, the disease moving through it as a pandemic, it's dangerous. It carries real risk. But at an individual level, our chances of getting it and getting sick from it are actually very, very low.
Yeah.
So we've got to try and find the balance. I don't think so far the reactions we've seen probably at an executive level, where they're so worried about the risk of liability. Now we're seeing liability panic, not disease panic. And I think that's probably, what I would reflect on when I hear you say those things, Ben, because I feel exactly the same way.
I'm wondering with the messaging that comes out whether there's a certain lapseness, I guess, at a institutional level in terms of responding to these things, where we've had examples of, other viruses coming out, and it's like there wasn't enough, I'm only speculating, of course, that there wasn't enough preparation or enough insight to think maybe we should prepare in the event that something like this should happen, so that we activate the plan when when it does happen, and we just start rolling through it. It just doesn't seem like that's actually what's happening. Not in in the sense that it doesn't seem as smooth as what it should be.
Oh, I couldn't agree with you more. And I think the problem is that particularly in the West, they've only half followed the WHO guidelines, because while it was happening in Italy, it wasn't happening in Germany or France or the US. But hey, hang on, it is. You're just not testing for it.
Yeah.
And I think that they're the sorts of inconsistencies that now have led to it being global in the way that it is. And, as I say, it's about getting these things right at the start and sort of thinking through them in the right way. And I think we've had a failure of that at a global leadership level.
Well, it's interesting that Trump declares a national emergency for the US now, after spending time making comments along the lines of it'll pass, it'll miraculously disappear, and all that kind of stuff.
Just like the flu.
Yeah, he says, can't you get a flu shot for that? Can't that work? That kind of talk. And it's interesting watching a lot of the news coverage coming out of the States, in that the media there actually, and again, the media is playing a role in this. That's a whole other topic that you could that you could talk about, where they're basically saying things like, where's the response, guys?
Yeah.
Where's the response? Where and they're comparing, to, like, say, South Korea testing 10,000 people a day, and then, like, in total they've only tested 15,000 kind of thing, and doing number crunching like that.
That's right.
And
so it's probably out there. I think the other thing that's worth thinking about is that, the World Health Organizations, and the development of these responses typically are for much more serious diseases. And I think there's been a disconnect between people understanding what the risks of a disease like this spreading is. Effectively, if you want a poor analogy, but it's good enough, a new kind of flu spreading versus Ebola or SARS spreading. And so I think to that end, there was confusion probably in a lot of political minds as to what to do. So it didn't seem that serious. So therefore it doesn't matter. But it's that whole population, it's that global population, global spread that actually is the issue in these cases. And I think that's why it's probably not been handled optimally.
I think too, though, you get the disconnect happening too, where you get like announcements, like for instance here with limiting gatherings of 500 people or more. Audiences or spectators not permitted to go to sporting events or concerts. But
it's still okay to hang around the shopping mall.
Yeah, or public transport, for instance, with in condensed spaces, or even things like it goes all the way up to Hollywood postponing major tentpole releases, delaying productions, and then there's the tech world, like a lot of the big conferences this year. Apple announcing that they'll do WWDC entirely online this year, as an example. Obviously,
just replay last year's.
Yeah, that's right. But the thing is that it's not that that's not necessarily like it's a good precaution to take, because in the sense of trying to limit the spread, but then it gets interpreted as like,
that's right.
like it's like, oh my God, we're at some dangerous level that all these things have to be shut down, and that's where that disconnect seems to be happening. And it'll just be interesting at the end of the day whether there's going to be a collective lessons learned, shall we say, from what ends up happening. And that, on that last point too, that's one thing that in a lot of the reading I've been doing is that it seems as if there isn't, like when it's not happening, enough thought is being put into dealing with it when it actually does happen.
So, I mean, I think the real lessons to learn out of this are personal hygiene. I'm hopeful that this will actually change workplace culture globally, where when you start to get the flu, I'm not even talking about COVID now, when you start to get the flu or the sniffles, stay home. And don't worry about what your boss is going to think or what your colleagues are going to think. Now everyone should be thanking you for doing that, because let's just stop trying to spread disease. What I'd hate to see, though, is enforce hand washing every 15 minutes. I think that's going a bit far, but it's just about being more thoughtful. And being thoughtful, do you need to go back to the supermarket for the 20th time today to try and pinch another roll of toilet paper? And then potentially catch the disease because you've been there all day at the shopping mall. It's little things like that. How about just stay home, Netflix, and just chill out?
But is there a component of this that I guess you got to shrug your shoulders and just realise that there's going to be a certain percentage that are just going to act this way anyway?
Yeah, well, there always will be. So even if you go the 80-20 rule, there's always going to be 1 in 5 people totally freaked out, panic buying and that sort of thing. And that impacts the rest of us, So you need to buy that toilet paper because you probably need toilet paper. And if you don't take a 10-pack, you've got no guarantee that you'll get a roll next week. So, I don't know how you manage things like these, but I think, if 80% of the population can stay calm, then I think it actually has a calming effect on the other 20% who probably won't amend their habits markedly, but at least they'll be a bit calmer as they're hoarding their toilet paper.
Absolutely. One thing I did want to touch on was that story of Tom Hanks and Rita Wilson and his wife Rita Wilson getting the virus, and it's not that is extraordinary in and of itself, and even their
you mean
reaction
celebrities can get it too?
But that's the thing. It's like the media reaction. A human face has now been added that can can put a face on this virus that we never had before, and it was just like, give me a break. It's not like their fault either. It's not as if they were going out and saying anything. Like, they just said, look, we got it, we're fine. And even actually the messaging that that they posted was like, we're isolated, we're doing all right, and it's kind of calm. But the thing is, then the media jumps on it and, oh my God, Tom Hanks has got it, one of our most beloved celebrities, and that turns into this weird, distorted piece of crap, really, of a story. And
our own immigration minister has got it.
Yeah.
And he met Ivanka Trump last week.
Yeah.
And there's someone else, I think, who was there at those meetings. And, of course, the president won't get tested because there's no way in the world the president could get something like that ever. So, but, it's infected our politicians now.
Yeah.
So, not to say that's not a bad thing.
But it's, I guess, just bringing it back to the media angle, it's that sensationalization, if that's a word, of that type of thing, like as if that carries more value than just someone like you or me getting it, or anyone else getting it. It just seems a bit, again, it plays into that overblown part of this whole story.
That's right, and the seriousness of it, and it's hard to feel sympathy for someone in Italy or China or South Korea with it. But when it's an American celebrity and they're in a country like Australia, that's a story that you just you just can't get enough of it. Especially when then as a media company you can then isolate the crew that interviewed her, disinfect your studios, and make a news story out of that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. One final point I wanted to touch on, and it kind of, I guess, branches off something you said earlier about, like a cultural change in terms of, you've got the, maybe people in workplaces and public areas will have a better sense in terms of hygiene, et cetera, or how they, they're not necessarily coughing on everything or stuff like that. But there's also I guess, a component of actually, hopefully a lot of people will educate themselves about how these things happen. And then that, again, not accounting for your 80-20 sort of ratio before, maybe that 80% that does stay calm has even more reason to stay calm when they understand how something like this rolls out over time. Because as they said, it's going to take a while for a vaccine to come. And it's just one of those things that we have to roll through until it actually gets dealt with.
Well, and that's right. And you've made a very good point there. So in flu season, everyone takes an extra precaution. Maybe they do wash their hands a bit more frequently, and they are not negatively, but naturally suspicious of people who are sniffling or coughing on public transport. And you try and avoid getting too close to that person. But you wouldn't do anything different if someone had COVID-19 or, in fact, any other, just a common cold. Yeah. So why then should these practices suddenly become, something that causes anxiety because there's something like COVID-19 out there? It's all about just thinking clearly about things, avoiding risk. I really don't know that people catch these flus at the game or these illnesses at the games. It's more likely on the public transport on the way. But, minimise your risk, good practice, and, if you are sick, you just stay away. And I think they're the things that you can do in a very basic sense that give you a lot of protection.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's what people have to remember. You're not going to get it from somebody that doesn't have it, and if you take all the good precautions, then your chances of getting it from somebody who has it are actually quite low.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's no one wants to get it. Avoid it, stay safe, but don't go crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. It's probably a good place to finish up, and I guess we'll just have to see how it continues to unfold. Not just the virus itself, but I think more interestingly, our reaction to it.
Well, I figure we'll be talking about this again over the next few weeks.
Absolutely. All right, so don't forget to check out our website, SciTechCulture.com. You can get all of our links and content there. You can subscribe to our YouTube and Vimeo channels, our RSS feeds, watch us on any and all of your devices, and we greatly appreciate your visits to our website. All right, so that's it for this episode. We'll catch you next time.